All right, let's dive right into this explainer because what we're going to unpack today will fundamentally change how you view your own free will. We all absolutely love to believe that we are fully in control of our choices, our beliefs, and our actions. But the source material we're looking at today reveals a completely different reality. It actually maps out how every empire, authoritarian government, and even modern digital platforms have utilized the exact same psychological shortcuts to control populations. We're going to look at the undeniable science behind this, and more importantly, how you can spot these invisible strings in your own life. 65%. Really think about that number for a second. That is the staggering and frankly terrifying finding discovered in a landmark 1961 Yale study conducted by Stanley Milgram. Researchers set out to test human obedience, basically asking volunteers to administer electric shocks to a stranger in another room every time that stranger answered a question incorrectly. Now, the shocks were completely fake and the stranger was an actor, but the volunteers had no idea. The researchers discovered that 65% of ordinary Americans would electrocute a stranger to the maximum 450-volt level simply because a scientist in a lab coat firmly told them to continue. No way, right? The absolute crucial point here is captured perfectly by Milgram himself. He noted that ordinary people, simply doing their jobs and without any particular hostility on their part, can become agents in a terrible, destructive process. The source text strongly stresses that we shouldn't look at this and think, oh, those volunteers were inherently evil. Nope. Instead, the capacity to be controlled isn't a flaw of bad people. It is a fundamental feature of human psychology that operates on absolutely everyone. Yes, including you and me.
Which brings us to Section 1, the illusion of free will.
We really do love to believe we act based on our deeply held core values, but the science documented in our sources proves over and over again that context actually overrides character. Take Phillips and Bardo's 1971 Stanford prison experiment. College students were randomly assigned to be guards or prisoners. The setup was so incredibly powerful that the guards turned abusive within just 24 hours. It's a chilling behavioral shift that the source notes directly parallels real-world events like the Abu Ghraib prison abuse in 2004. Or consider the 1951 Asch conformity experiments. People were just asked to match the length of lines on a card, a literally elementary visual task. But when actors in the room deliberately gave the wrong answer, 75% of actual participants conformed to the incorrect majority at least once. They denied their own eyes just to conform to a group. So you don't act on your values, you act on your context.
Let's move on to Section 2, 6 weapons of influence.
Okay, so if context controls behavior, then whoever controls the context controls you, right? Our source material beautifully maps these psychological blind spots directly to Robert Cialdini's famous 6 weapons of influence. This is essentially the universal toolkit used by every major power structure in history. And that brings us to our first lever, reciprocity. This is the psychological mechanism where you feel super obligated to return a favor when you're given something. It is deeply, deeply hardwired into us as social creatures. When someone gives you something for free, you instinctively feel like you owe them the whole shebang. And it's fascinating because the Roman Empire figured this out way before the digital age, offering free bread and circuses to citizens just to ensure their loyalty and distract them from failing politics. Jump to the modern era, and social media platforms have totally perfected this. Instead of actual bread, they're feeding you a stream of endless entertainment, free apps, and massive dopamine hits through likes. And in return, you feel subconsciously obligated to give them your time, your data, and your attention. It's a wildly effective trade. The second lever they pull is commitment. This is the psychological tendency that once you say yes to something really small, you are totally primed to say yes to something much bigger later on. It's an escalating ladder where a tiny initial agreement literally traps you into a massive eventual compromise, simply because humans naturally want their behaviors to remain consistent. Historically, authoritarian regimes like Nazi Germany utilized this to devastating effect. They didn't start with massive, horrifying demands. They started with small, escalating loyalty oaths, making it psychologically so much harder for citizens to refuse later orders. Today, as our sources point out, modern apps use what are called dark patterns, these tiny, escalating digital initiation steps and micro-commitments that slowly trap your data and lock you into endless subscriptions. The technology is new, for sure, but the psychology is absolutely identical. Weapon 3 is social proof. Now this is the Asch experiment in full action. It's the human instinct to do what you believe everyone else is doing, assuming the majority must be correct. It's literally the reason you'll stand in a ridiculously long line for a coffee shop just because everyone else is doing it. You constantly look around to see how to behave, which means whoever controls the perception of the crowd entirely controls you.
During the Cold War, Soviet propagandists masterfully pushed the illusion of mass party support. They didn't actually need everyone to believe the ideology, they just needed everyone to believe that everyone else believed it, which forces compliance. Fast forward to today, we see this exact same mechanism working as digital astroturfing. Fake follower counts, bot farms, and algorithmic consensus are used to manufacture that exact same illusion of mass support right on your social media timeline.
Next up is authority. This is the core finding of that terrifying Milgram experiment. It's our deep-seated urge to blindly obey credentials and symbols of expertise. Evolutionarily, we are wired to just defer to uniforms, titles, and confident voices, completely bypassing our own critical thinking in the process. Ancient Roman elites used religious titles like Pontifex Maximus to command absolute, unquestioning obedience. In the 20th century, regimes used pseudoscience all wrapped up in academic language. Today, modern platforms use algorithmic, experts say, tags and verified blue checkmarks. That little blue icon instantly short-circuits your skepticism today, just as effectively as a literal lab coat did back in 1961. The fifth weapon is elegantly simple: liking. It is the human tendency to comply with people you like or people who act like they like you. It's that simple. If a friendly, attractive, or relatable face is delivering the message, our psychological defenses just drop entirely. We can actually draw a direct line from the terrifying personality cults of Stalin, Mao, and the Kim family, who engineered national charisma so citizens felt a deeply personal bond with them, directly to the parasocial grip of modern influencer marketing. Today, a person you've never even met feels like your digital best friend, and because you like them, you are perfectly primed to buy whatever product or ideology that they are selling. And the final weapon is scarcity. This is the perception that rare things are inherently more valuable, triggering an intense fear of missing out. FOMO is real, folks. When we feel something is running out, panic completely shuts down the logical, deliberative part of our brain. Wartime governments historically manipulated rationing, creating this artificial desperation to control populations and crush dissent. Today, it's the countdown timer ticking away on your favorite e-commerce checkout page, or a limited-time offer to join an exclusive online community. The engineered panic, that desperate feeling of, oh my gosh, I have to act right now, works exactly the same way. Okay, let's jump to section 3. Same formula, different delivery. Because, these aren't just isolated tricks. They are part of an evolving, heavily optimized machinery that has been running for decades. The technique literally never changes, only the speed. In 1933, propagandists like Goebbels needed a massive radio tower to push simple slogans and externalize enemies. By the 1950s, KGB active measures required physically planting fake stories in foreign newspapers to exploit social divisions. By 2016, entities like Cambridge Analytica didn't need newspapers at all. They just used your social media data for individual psychographic targeting. And today, in the era of the algorithm, no single propagandist is even needed. Today's blind algorithms just need your thumb to distribute fear, optimizing entirely for engagement. The unifying control formula underlying all of this is alarmingly simple. Step 1, identify the fear. Step 2, offer the enemy. Step 3, promise salvation. Step 4, repeat until it feels like truth. From the Roman Emperor Caligula right down to your modern scrolling feeds, this step-by-step formula hasn't changed a bit. The algorithm simply discovered by total accident that pushing fear and outrage through this exact formula is what keeps you watching the longest. Finally, section 4, how to cut the strings. Look, you can't just completely opt out of this ubiquitous influence. It is literally everywhere. But you can dismantle the illusion right now by asking 3 specific questions whenever you consume information. Question 1, who benefits from me believing this? The source suggests that instead of getting instantly trapped in an endless loop of trying to figure out if a specific headline is totally true or totally false, you should take a step back. Track the incentive structure, ask yourself whose power actually grows or whose wallet gets thicker when you accept this narrative without question. Question 2, am I afraid or am I informed? Because fear is the absolute primary delivery vehicle for propaganda and algorithmic manipulation, you have to be super vigilant. You must ruthlessly distinguish between information that expands your understanding and options versus information that is deliberately designed to narrow your worldview and push you into a corner of panic. And finally, question 3, would I believe this if everyone else didn't? This is how you apply the Asch conformity experiment to your daily life. Strip away the social pressure, ignore the retweets, ignore the likes, ignore the crowd, and look directly at the information. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this really provocative thought to carry with you. When you make your next big decision, or share your next strong opinion, are you truly acting on your own core values, or are you just reacting to the context